answer's yes?
Yes.
Tom and Debbie have just made a decision, one that will have far-reaching consequences. As a matter of fact, their decision was also what we might call a central decision. A central decision, like deciding to get married, is one that will affect many people. Usually, it means more decisions will be required. We call these satellite decisions. It seems that one of those satellite decisions is already orbiting for a landing. Listen.
Okay. How about university housing?
Yeah, but there's a 6-month waiting list on those. I'm not gonna wait that long. Are you?
No.
Okay.
We could get an apartment in Cedar City.
That's a good idea, except I don't think this car can make 70 miles a day back and forth. It's about ready to fall apart now.
People make three types of decisions: technical, economic, and social.
Well, $1 million.
What you just heard Tom and Debbie working toward was a technical decision. This means that they already had a goal: to find a place to live. Their discussion centered around alternative means for reaching that goal. Later on in our story, we'll see examples of economic and social decisions. All of us make decisions. Some of us make 50 decisions a day. Some of us make the same decision 50 times, and that is to decide later. Those are good examples of two styles of decision-making: snap judgment and procrastinating. In making a snap judgment, we give in to our impulses. Decide now and think later is our motto. Making snap judgments is not always desirable, but it's sometimes necessary. When we procrastinate making a decision, we use delaying tactics. We can deliberate and deliberate, and then may finally just decide to go along with what the others decide.
I think I'll have a chocolate one with nuts too. Yeah, me too.
Thank you.
I think I'll have one too.
But even taking too long to make up your mind is better than not making a decision at all.
I like them. They look really good on you.
Well, but
What agony we can go through.
get a sandal.
A kind of paralysis sets in when we're confronted with the need for a decision.
Put this one on again. There. Oh, dear. I wish my husband were here. Are you sure you don't have anything else?
Sometimes our emotions take over. Or we're guided by hunches or intuition. The rational approach is the most effective and satisfying. Once we realize that a decision must be made, we consider the alternatives. Then we get information and advice about the alternatives and evaluate the facts carefully.
Yes, they run anywhere from $300 to $600. We have some in here if you'd like to look at.
Yeah.
Do these.
Is it worth the cost? In money, emotions, time? Would something else do as well? Questions like these may come to mind.
You like that? About how much is this?
That ring is $600.
Well, maybe we'll walk around for a little while and think about it.
Then we give ourselves time to think it over,
Sure. it's
and
Tom
we
Graves.
decide. 4 styles of decision-making: impulsive, deliberate, indecisive, rational. We all use each of these 4 styles at one time or another, but usually we favor one. For most situations, the rational approach is best. Now let's visit with Debbie's family for a minute and see what styles they are using as they handle another of those satellite decisions. This time we'll see them exploring alternatives before making an economic decision. Just because you see Dad going over the bills, don't jump to the conclusion that an economic decision is concerned only with money. It can also relate to time, talent, energy, or other resources. How do you divide those resources among several goals to get the greatest benefit at least cost? This is what Debbie and her mother are considering now.
You'll want to have a wedding reception, Debbie. Your wedding day is the happiest day of your life.
Yes. But a reception is so expensive. Couldn't we have something casual here at home? And then maybe Dad could give us the difference in cash?
Sue had her reception at home, and it was really nice. But according to Aunt Alice, they didn't save that much. And it took a lot of time. Debbie, could you stop paying so much attention to that music and talk about your wedding for a few minutes? How can I do everything if I don't know what you want?
I'm sorry, Mother. But I was scheduled for the recital first. I can't back out now. Besides, it's billed for a quartet, not a trio. It'll be over 2 weeks before the wedding.
Why not postpone the wedding date?
Because then we'll have to pay an extra month's rent.
Oh. Well, if we do have it at home, I'll need to have the drapes cleaned. Or maybe I ought to buy new ones. What do you think, Debbie?
Mother, I don't care.
How about if I gave you the money instead? And you can elope.
Way to go, Dad. Oh, poor Mom.
Whoa, look out, look out.
Hi, Dr. Tom.
Hi, short stuff. Listen, is Debbie here?
Can't you tell she's fiddling around with her fiddle again? Go right in.
Thanks.
Hey, Dad? Listen, I made it. I got accepted today. I'm going to medical school in Philadelphia. Listen,
Philadelphia?
Yeah. Now listen, I know it means that we're going to have to cut back on some of the luxuries and things, but I know we can make it. Boy, I've waited for this for so long, I just about given up hope. What's the matter? I thought you'd be excited.
Oh, Tom, I am excited for you.
For me? Dad, listen, this is for us, me and you.
Well, I just thought we'd have a little more time around here.
Now listen, you know that job in the pharmacy was just a stopgap until I could get into medical school.
I know.
Right?
But see, I thought we'd have at least a couple of years around here until I could get established. And, well, you know.
No, I don't. Established in what?
Well, in my music, of course. Well, I'm just now beginning to get a reputation
Music?
as a real musician, and our quartet's beginning to make a name for itself. And, oh, Philadelphia, that changes things.
Well, yeah, but it changes things for the better. Don't you see that? Now, look, Deb, in a couple of years, you'll be married to the great Dr. Tom Graves, and then you'll have all the time you want to fiddle to your heart's content.
Fiddle? Is that all you consider my music, fiddling?
That's what it is, isn't it?
You've never taken my music very seriously, have you?
No, I guess not. I don't know. I guess I just never thought about it.
Well, maybe you'd better start thinking about it that way. Maybe I don't feel like picking up and traipsing off to Philadelphia at a moment's notice and giving up everything that I've worked for so long.
Now listen, if this two-bit quartet of yours
Two
is more
bit?
important to you than I am, yeah, maybe it's a good thing we found out now before it's too late.
You might as well stop talking because I'm not listening anymore.
All right, fine. You let me know if you decide you can squeeze me into your
Oh,
life
Tom,
somewhere
that's not-
between your fiddle and your string quartet.
So what happens now?
Well, perhaps I could join him in a couple of years after I've gotten established, around here, I mean.
Well, it seems to me that Philadelphia has a lot more to offer a musician than this town.
Yes, but I don't know anybody in Philadelphia. And all that competition. And I don't think there's a teacher there that could teach me any better than Professor Unsworth. And besides, well, it would be easier for me to get started there if I didn't go there a complete nobody.
Well, what if you haven't made it by then, Debbie? Is it worth waiting 2 years to get married?
2 years? That's forever. 2 years. 2 whole years.
Daddy, I can make it. I know I can. If I stay here with Professor Unsworth.
That sounds just dumb. D-U-M dumb.
Mother, it's none of her business.
Ellen, go back to bed.
Poor old Dr. Tom, boy. What if he won't wait for you? What then? Huh, fiddle faddle?
Mother,
Ellen, go back to bed.
what if he won't wait for me? In a way, 2 years is an awfully long time.
Well, what if he won't wait? Have you thought of anything else?
Well, frankly, just not getting married at all.
Then you think a career is more important than getting married?
A career? Anybody can have a career. I'd take Dr. Tom any day.
Mother, would you know? So would I. Oh, I know some girls would give up anything for a career. But for me, that's not enough. I want it all. The whole thing. I want children and a home and Dr. Tom.
You think Tom will ask you to give up your music?
I don't know. I don't know. It seems so unimportant to him. How do I know he won't end up just like Grandpa?
Grandpa? How does Grandpa fit into this?
Grandpa? How does he fit into this? Let's look at it this way. In a family, the nature of a decision and the decision-making style of the person who makes it can have far-reaching effects on family moods, family accomplishments, and family happiness. A decision from out of the past has become a factor in some very important decision-making today. You see, Heber, Debbie's grandfather, well, it's quite an interesting story.
Heber looked at his lands, and he was pleased. He'd be leaving them tomorrow, and his hands hurt with anticipated idleness. But he knew there was no other way when a man is 78 and has to make 2 rest stops with a full bucket of milk between the barn and the kitchen. Could it really be 55 years ago that, sitting right there, they had talked? His father's voice had never left him.
Heber, I'm trusting to you the most precious thing I've got. I worked hard for this land. I'm giving it to you as a stewardship, son. And when your time with the land is done and we get together again, I'm going to call you to account. I'm going to say, Heber, did you make it more than you found it? Did you watch it and tend it? Did you make it grow? Is it everything it can be? That's what I'll want to know.
Heber looked out on the fields that for 50 years had been green and gold in proper turn. Even his father hadn't been able to get peaches. He could hardly wait to report about those. Margaret was finishing the last closet. Just a few things were going to the city, and the rest rose in a mountain on the back porch, waiting for the children to sort through and take what they chose. What in the world? In an instant, her face cleared, and in her hands was the old familiar case. The violin. She hadn't touched it for 40 years, hadn't thought of it for 20 at least. Well, there they finally were. The tears. Her mother's dishes hadn't done it, or the little Bibles she had almost buried with Ellen, or the Valentines. But there they were, for the violin. She picked up the bow. Had it always been so thin? The wood felt smooth against her chin as she put the bow to a string. A slow, startled sound wavered, then fell. How did she used to tune it? Oh, well, no sense wasting time on moving day. If Heber should come in, he would say, "Well, there's Margaret fiddling around with her fiddle again." He'd always said it with a smile, though.
I could have done it, and it wouldn't have hurt him.
He hadn't minded that she'd practice 2 hours every afternoon. After all, she got up at 5, and nobody in the world could criticize the way she kept the house or the care she gave to the children. And he was proud that she was asked to play twice a year at the church. And music made her so happy. And then she was invited to join the symphony in town. Oh, to play with a real orchestra again, in a hall, with a real audience again.
But Margaret, isn't that too much to ask of a woman with children and a farm to tend?
Oh, Heber, I'll get up at 4 if I have to. I won't let down. Not a bit, I promise.
But I couldn't guarantee 2 nights a week. Not with my responsibilities to the farm and to the church.
Heber, there's no way to tell you how important this is to me. Please, Heber, I'll get up at 4 if I have to.
But Heber said no. What if something happened to the car? And then it just wouldn't look right for a man's wife to be out chasing around like that. What would it lead to next? It was his responsibility to take care of her. She had been given to him, in fact. And it was up to him to decide these things. So Heber said no. She had seemed to take it all right, though she was quieter than usual, and more an afternoon would pass without her practicing. If Heber ever thought about it in later years, he marked it up to the twins. Motherhood was hard on a woman, and Margaret just wasn't quite the same as before. She laid the violin in its case and rubbed away the small, wet drop on her thin hand.
I could have done it. Heber, you didn't understand. I could have done it and not hurt anybody.
Slowly she made her way to the porch and put the violin with the things for the children to sort through.
Will any of them remember? I don't think so.
All of us have a reservoir of time, talent, energy, money, skills, and other resources, a stewardship. We may do very well with the stewardship of land, as Heber did. We may do very well with the stewardship of a house, as Margaret did. The decisions we make regarding them are largely economic and technical. But what about our stewardship of people? Here was a social decision involving conflicts in values and goals between Heber and Margaret. But Heber failed to take into consideration Margaret's feelings, opinions, and values. So here is Debbie, basing some of today's values on decisions made yesterday.
I couldn't live like that. Never to play again.
Debbie, it was Mother's own decision not to play at all. Father just didn't want her to play in the symphony.
I'd never thought of it that way. But the important thing, Daddy, is that Grandpa just didn't understand. He thought Grandma's violin was a toy for her to play with.
Well, things have changed somewhat over the past 50 years. Don't you think Tom will see it differently?
He calls it a fiddle. Maybe he'll never understand how important it is to me.
It's true Tom wasn't prepared for Debbie's reaction, but he quickly realized that her conflicting goals and values called for a rational, workable solution to a difficult problem.
Thank you. I know she'll really appreciate this. She thinks very highly of you. Well, this will introduce her to...
In considering alternatives, he went to the best sources he could think of to get information. Professor Unsworth is one of them.
Very much. Listen, I am sorry about yesterday. To just spring everything on you like that. I guess I just never stopped to realize that your music was that important to you. I just always thought you meant keeping up your skill and just practicing, you know, but I know better now. Now listen, I thought about it a lot last night, okay? And then today I went up to the music department. I talked to your professor. He said Philadelphia's full of great musicians. And he got so excited that you might have a chance to study there. And he gave me the name of a man that you could get in touch with when you get up there. And he even wrote you out this letter of recommendation. And I made sure that I asked him if this guy was a first-rate teacher. He just laughed. He said people used to stand in line to study with this man. He said that there was no way that he could teach as much as this man could.
I didn't think anyone was better than Professor Unsworth.
And he also said that he'd go ahead and write him and tell him that you were coming, but I told him that maybe we better check with you before he did that. And he also said that there was somebody else here in the orchestra that was from Philadelphia.
Oh, Lynn! Oh, I knew he was from the East, but well, I didn't realize he was from Philadelphia. I'll talk to him. And I'll call this man in Philadelphia. Oh. Tom, forgive me. All I could think about last night was how disappointed I was, and I started thinking about Grandma and how I didn't want to end up like that.
Your grandma?
Oh, yes. Well, you see, my grandma played the violin. She gave me hers. But she stopped playing a long time before I was even born. You see, well, Grandpa... Well, anyway, that's why I was so determined not to give up my music. I guess a little tunnel vision got in my way. I couldn't think very clearly last night. I even thought about postponing the wedding. Or worse, I guess I just didn't know that you would... Well, I didn't know how much you would understand.
I want you to know that your happiness is really important to me, okay? Somehow I just knew that there would be a solution that would be good for the both of us. But we're still a long way from all the answers. We've still got to think about money. I won't have an income now. I probably won't for, I don't know, at least 3 years. And even then, it won't be much to live on. Well, listen, Joe says I can still stay and work at the pharmacy through the summer, and that'll give us a start. And then my dad said he'll help with tuition. And
My lessons will be an expense, but I could teach violin. I'd still be working in my field. That'll help. Or we could wait a couple of years.
no, I need a life. I'm not waiting any longer to get married. I just know we can work this thing out if we just take the time to think it through first.
Well, my father...
As Tom and Debbie explore their alternatives and weigh the advantages and disadvantages of each, they will finally make the decisions that will help them meet both their goals. Like the rest of us, they may not find perfect solutions. They may have to compromise, but their decisions can be the best for them under the circumstances. A final step in making decisions is to take responsibility for them. Can we accept the consequences, good or bad, without shifting the blame? Are we willing to make adjustments when necessary? Tom and Debbie will find this a major factor in their future happiness. Whether we're on yesterday's farm, in today's condominium, or in tomorrow's apartment, in decision-making, what determines our success and satisfaction is how we make those decisions.